It usually happens during cross-examination. They don't remember things. But Neama, let me ask you a big picture question. And we all understand and we appreciate that in this country you're presumed innocent, you don't have to testify. But when defendants do testify, don't you think the jury gets a better picture and has an easier road to figuring out the truth?
They do. And when defendants testify, like Lilly did in this case, the entire case comes down to their testimony, especially when it's a self-defense case. And I agree with Eklund, it was a dumpster fire. And with Kirk, it's very hard to present a self-defense case without actually testifying. And we're going to see a few more of these. We know the McMichaels are going to present this in the Ahmaud Arbery case. That's going to trial. Obviously, Kyle Rittenhouse, this is his defense. So I'm glad the viewers got a preview. But this was absolutely terrible. He was decimated on cross-examination, especially when he testified that after he stabbed the victim 7 times, he was worried that the victim, Peters, was going to go get a gun. And then he fled the scene. He went to another city, didn't call 911 till the next day. I mean, it was absolutely brutal. And I agree with my colleagues here, whether it was poor preparation or just someone that was frankly unable to perform. This was one of the worst defendant testimonies that I've ever seen. And if he had any chance, based on that video, not having the knife in his hand when he left his porch, he lost it completely. I think the jury's going to convict here. The question is, what was Lilly's explanation for what he did with the knife afterwards? He didn't remember what he did with his knife or his clothes. I mean, that was just terrible for him. Could have been in his pocket, even if the victim had it. I mean, the way it went down, he had no defensive wounds. It's going to be very difficult. I agree with Eklund. I try to plead this out. West Virginia has actually a mercy law that the jury can return a 15-year minimum. Maybe you ask for that if you're the defense, because really that's the best it's going to get here.
Well, see the doomsday prophet here in that continuum, right? It's like, is he the worst of the worst? Is he the one that should be facing the death penalty if, in fact, these charges are proven?
Chad Daybell is the worst of the worst. There is nothing worse than killing your own child. This is pure evil. I think he's even worse than Scott Peterson. One of these children with special needs, and they've been involved in multiple murders. So if you believe in the death penalty, this is a death penalty case. I don't know what Blake and the Idaho prosecutor's office is doing. They've been moving at a snail's pace during this entire investigation. The children disappeared 2 years ago. Their remains were found more than a year ago. I don't know why we're having this conversation now. These are death penalty charges that should have been brought months ago. I don't know what they're waiting on, frankly. There's going to be no more evidence in this case. The bodies were found in Chad's backyard, and then he ran away when they were digging them up. This is a death penalty case, Vinny.
And the way I see it, he was motivated by a couple of things.
This case is going to get international attention regardless of whether there's a death penalty phase, a capital phase here. Everyone has been looking for these kids for 2 years now. While this couple was vacationing in Hawaii, they were not following court orders to disclose the whereabouts of their children. The nation has been on edge while law enforcement has been looking for JJ and Tylee, and ultimately they found their remains. So regardless of what the penalty is, everyone is going to be watching this evil man, and he's going to have his stage regardless.
Kirk, I want in Florida. The defense very aggressively going after one of the grandparents, going after George Anthony, making him into some sort of a villain. I could see that happening in this trial as well, because Grandma's been in and out of jail a couple of times. Grandpa, who reported the child missing, has had some issues in the past as well. So I could see that being another similarity in this case.
No question. Well, fortunately now we have a Megan Boswell law. You have to report missing children in Tennessee within 24 hours. But I'm not going to mention her name, and you don't know what 12 jurors are going to do. I mean, we talked about the self-defense case at the top of the hour, and Durst is on trial, and he walked for Morris Black, and no one thought that was going to happen. But you got to hope jurors are going to do the right thing. And the defense in this case absolutely is to point the finger at other family members, some of whom have significant criminal history, one of whom the body was found on his property. So I'm not saying we're going to guarantee to have a different result, but it is a different case. A lot more inconsistent statements here. First blaming Evelyn's father, who was active duty military in Louisiana, then blaming mom. And the story just kept shifting and shifting. We have lots of recorded and video statements, I think, more than the case down in Florida. And I think ultimately prosecutors are going to pick the right jury and get a conviction in this case. I'm hopeful it's not going to end up like that other case.
Nephew's testimony. Also, Avery was the last person to see her alive. His DNA was found in her car. Please don't say again that the cops planted it. Neama, a lot of people believe that there are a lot of defendants out there who are getting framed.
Well, look, Stephen Avery was exonerated by the Innocence Project for the first sexual assault. So let's just put that out there. But look, there's a huge difference between trial decisions and appellate decisions. And this is the same reason why Scott Peterson is not going to get a new trial, because the arguments raised were insufficient evidence, rejected, ineffective assistance of counsel, rejected, prosecutorial misconduct, rejected. These are appellate arguments. And frankly, even though Pam is disparaging Brendan, the nephew, had a much better case that his confession was coerced. At least a district judge ruled that it was. The circuit court ruled that it was. And only when it was litigated en banc, it was reversed by 4-3. So Brendan actually had a much better argument on appeal than Stephen Avery does.